A jury in the U.S. state of Georgia has delivered guilty verdicts to 3 men for the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, whose fatal shooting last year fueled mass protest against racism and vigilantism in the United States. The jury in the city of Brunswick found Travis McMichael, 35, guilty on all 9 charges he faced, including malice murder, felony murder, false imprisonment, and aggravated assault. The 3 men, all of whom pleaded not guilty, were charged after chasing and fatally shooting Arbery in February 2020 as he jogged through the coastal community of Satilla Shoals just outside of Brunswick. The 25-year-old's killing became part of a larger reckoning on racial injustice in the U.S. after graphic video of his death leaked online 2 months later, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over the case, quickly arresting the 3 men. And joining me virtually now from Washington to discuss this gruesome murder and the court judgment is a global affairs analyst, Sam Fateh. Good to have you join us, Sam Fateh.
My pleasure. So
this is generating reactions not just in the U.S., but also just around the world. When you look at the fact that in the case of George Floyd, there seemed to have been some justice. But in the case of the Rittenhouse case, people feel like there was no justice. And then the Ahmaud Arbery case, people feel like there is some level of justice as well. But you also look at the fact that it took 74 days to arrest McMichael, the 2 McMichaels, and the 3rd person in this case. How do you react to the judgment?
You know, I think being a black man in America myself, it's not something that you say you are happy about, because it's not supposed to happen in the first place, that you are just supposed to lose your life because you're walking on the street and because you are black, and that automatically makes you a suspect. I mean, the question is, you know, when we talk about justice, it should be overall. Was there accountability? I would insist, yes. Was there justice? That's going to be very subjective. I mean, unless we look at it on a case-by-case basis. The question becomes, does this make anybody safer as a black person or a person of color when you walk on the streets of America? I had the opportunity to read a book called Whistling Vivaldi, and this is what it says. Sometimes when you're black and you wear a suit and you wear a tie and you think you have a degree, and then you can even sing classical songs because they don't expect us to know that. Does that really still keep you safe? And the answer is no. There has been many histories of other black people. A young man going to college in Florida was traveling to his family, I think for Thanksgiving holiday. He got involved in an accident on the side of the road, and then he went to get help. Before you know it, the cops were called and he was killed. So look, these are private citizens. One of them, a former law enforcement officer, being found guilty of murder, especially in a place like Georgia. That's one case. But then how about if the police are directly involved, somebody within law enforcement, and they kill somebody? Most of them get away with it. In the Rittenhouse case, for example, he is not a cop, but that's another case where he got out. So now it's time for us to take a look at this from a holistic perspective. That not in every case that we would have a guilty verdict, but it's a work in progress, and I think we can see that we are getting there. If not for the fact that the people have been out there protesting and demanding justice, I doubt that the results will be what it is today.
And let's talk about this racism, because we also saw how in the George Floyd case, there seemed to have been some level of vilifying of the victim, who was now made to look like he was the offender. When you look at how the defense lawyer tried to make a mess of his reputation, even though he was long dead. And then you also look at this particular case of the defense attorney also trying to vilify Ahmaud Arbery, talking about his very vile racist comments when she talked about his dirty toenails. And people have begun to criticize the defense attorney on that. Does it show you how deep the issue of racism in the U.S. is, if it's also employed by lawyers in trying to prove a case?
You know, I think what the lawyers there were trying to do is just to sway one person in the jury, either to get a mistrial, which is why initially they went forward and demanded a mistrial. They would either try to get a mistrial by the jury not agreeing, get one person in the jury to disagree, or they want to really like create a chaotic scene outside, a reactionary scene outside. In fact, you can see how the defense lawyers try to make sure that they castigate the presence of rights leaders like Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson coming to court. It was actually even a big issue last week on the news, and people have been really talking about it. But one thing that they try to do in America is criminalize the black person. A lot of black people have been to jail for no reason, for the flimsiest little issues. Whether it is simply somebody stole you and they say, "Oh, you are trespassing," they call the cops, you get arrested, you are now in the system, you now have a record. And this happens multiple times. So when there's a situation like this, they are first point of call by prosecutors if you are on the defense side, and by defense counsel if you are on the prosecutor side, is to attack your personality by pulling out those records, trying to label you a criminal. And so the criminalization of black people in this country is as real as it gets. There will be no meaningful justice. You would have selective ones. You would have one justice here and one over there. But if you look at the statistics collectively, you will find that there are many cases like this where there have been no justice at all. So the justice system itself must change.
And that's where I'm going, because I listened to the lawyer for the Ahmaud Arbery family talking about this in terms of whether this is justice. While they agree, they are happy or excited about the fact that there is some level of justice for Ahmaud Arbery, but he said this is an anomaly, this is not the norm. But when you look at George Floyd, it looks like there was a victory. Then you look at Rittenhouse, it looks like there was no victory. And then this, I'm sure people are confused on how to feel. Should people have faith in the justice system when all of this, there's victory here and then you take a step backwards, there is no victory?
We have a long way to go in terms of saying that, look, we now have faith in America's criminal justice system. There is a long, long way to go. I mean, this is a system that is built upon and designed on injustice, on racism, and on the ideals of slavery and on discrimination. And it is so obvious. Most of the time, when people are called for jury duty, you see more white people than black people, even in communities where there are a lot of black people. So you can see there's a huge problem. And that is the very reason why and the way that penalties are given, for example, towards people of color and black people and towards a white person, it's very, very different. Again, you would see, for example, you have a majority of people in this country are white, but the majority of people that have been imprisoned are black. Why do you have such a very, very big difference in terms of the ratio? And these are people who are in prison for flimsy violations, and they have laws like the three strike. So one has to understand American history, for example. And this is where I have issues with people like Bill Clinton. This is where I have issues with people like the current president of the United States, Joe Biden. He's a Democrat, yes, but they have participated in passing laws today that are being used in incarcerating a whole lot of black people and tearing apart families. That's the reality and the truth about this country. So at the end of the day, politicians will do what politicians do in order to keep their positions and in order to build their future. But we need an entire reform. We need to go back and look at the laws. When you study American history, whether it's in college or on your own, you will come to learn that, for example, the 13th Amendment, we say, was supposed to abolish slavery. But deeply embedded in the 13th Amendment is the criteria in which once you land in jail or once you are in the penal system in prison in the United States, you are basically equivalent to a slave. You no longer have rights. So all of those have to be taken away.
There's still many cases in the U.S. awaiting trial. We'll see how they play out. Thank you so much for your insight and time, as always. Global Affairs Analyst Sam Fateh.
Thank you. My pleasure.